A few remarks on the difference between super and super duper. Language does not only describe the world, it stretches it. Every word is a small act of exaggeration, a measured distortion of the ordinary. The phrase super duper, for instance, seems childish, comic, or unserious. Yet beneath its play lies an inquiry into the mechanics of intensification itself. What happens when the good becomes the better than good, when excellence demands an excess of itself? The difference between super and super duper is not merely one of degree, but of metaphysical attitude. Super strives for elevation, super duper delights in the flight. We must learn to hear the seriousness in silliness. A child's doubling of a word, super duper, really, so good, reveals a primitive sense of wonder at the insufficiency of ordinary emphasis. The child, faced with the limits of adjectives, invents surplus. In this sense, super duper is not merely linguistic play, but ontological defiance, a refusal to let the world be contained by single measures. To say super duper is to say that the first super was not enough, that the real quality exceeds the system of names built to capture it. To understand this difference more precisely, let us turn to super. The word descends from the Latin super, meaning above, beyond, over. In classical cosmology, what was super belonged to the upper spheres, the celestial rather than the terrestrial. To be super meant to transcend the ordinary range of human operation. A superhuman strength, a supernatural power, a superlunar region, all implied something that rises beyond the common field of law and limitation. Thus, super is aspirational. It names the moment when the human will attempt to cross a boundary into the divine, or at least the extraordinary. It is the ambition of the vertical line, the upward thrust of being. Super is pure extension. It stretches toward perfection, and in that stretching finds its nobility. But precisely because super remains attached to form, to measurement, and to hierarchy, it remains serious. It must still obey the rules of its own transcendence. The superlative, superb, superior, supernatural relies on order. It wants to ascend, but to ascend in a straight line. The super is not chaos, but rank, a system of heights in which the highest presupposes the ladder beneath it. Enter super duper. The duplication transforms the entire structure. Super duper is not a higher form of super. It is a mockery and transcendence of the ladder itself. It does not climb, it leaps, laughing. The added duper, with its nursery rhythm and nonsense symmetry, introduces absurdity into excellence. Where super seeks refinement, super duper embraces play. Where super aspires to heaven, super duper dances on clouds. The rhythm of super duper matters. It is trochaic, super duper, a repeating beat that converts vertical ambition into circular delight. The syllables mirror each other like two clowns bowing in opposite directions. The echo is not additive but reflexive. It creates a loop of exaggeration, a feedback of joy. In this sense, super duper represents a second-order transcendence, not a rise above the human, but a rise above the serious. It is the transcendence of transcendence, the laughter of being at its own overstatement. Nietzsche would have recognized in it the spirit of the Übermensch filtered through a child's mouth, the one who can dance upon the mountaintop, who can mock greatness without losing it. There is a moral difference here as well. Super belongs to the ethic of perfection. It asks, how can one become better, stronger, purer? It believes in the measurable virtues of discipline and excellence. It operates within the grammar of work and reward. Super duper, by contrast, belongs to the ethic of delight. It is not the perfectionist's cry, but the celebrant's. It does not improve the thing. It enjoys it beyond reason. To say super duper is to suspend the calculus of effort and to live briefly in the overflow. It is, in its way, a mystical utterance, a joyful absurdity that mirrors divine laughter. If super is the voice of the craftsman, super duper is the voice of the fool, but of the holy fool, the one who sees the futility of constant improvement and yet still plays along. The fool in ancient dramas was not the opposite of the sage but his shadow. He told the truth by refusing solemnity. So too super duper speaks wisdom through excess. It reveals that perfection without joy is a sterile heaven. Consider how these two tones play out in the human psyche. The person of super is driven. They measure progress, chase results, optimize, refine. They live in tension with the limits of their own striving. Their danger is exhaustion, the tragic fatigue of those who climb forever toward an ever-receding summit. The person of super duper, on the other hand, lives in play. Their excess is not in height but in color. They know that beyond a certain point, there is nothing higher to reach, only more vibrant ways to dance where one already stands. Their danger is frivolity, the temptation to mistake irony for freedom. But when balanced rightly, the super-duper soul transforms irony into innocence, the capacity to laugh not from detachment, but from abundance. There is a cultural dimension too. Modernity, with its obsession for improvement, runs on the logic of super. Every product must be superior, every update supercharged. We build faster machines, smarter systems, better algorithms, all in the service of a linear escalation. Yet beneath this logic something vital decays. The more we climb, the less we laugh. Against this popular speech rebels, it sneaks in a duper. It says, super duper good, super duper nice, super duper cool. In that comic redundancy, the language itself resists the tyranny of efficiency. It refuses to be purely functional. It keeps a space for joy within communication. Super duper is the people's poetry, a small rebellion against the perfectionist empire of super. The difference, then, is not only in tone but in politics. Super belongs to the system of hierarchy. It sustains capitalism, meritocracy, ambition. Super duper belongs to the carnival. It disrupts order with laughter, dissolves power in parody. Bakhtin would say that the carnival redeems the serious by overturning it. The doubling of super into super duper is a linguistic carnivalization of excellence. It mocks what it loves and thereby saves it. The philosopher must not despise this play, for in the structure of super duper lies a deeper truth about being itself. Every act of creation begins with a surplus, an energy that cannot be reduced to necessity. Life, in its essence, is duper. It doubles upon itself for no reason but joy. A flower blooms not because it must, but because it can. The bird sings beyond hunger. The universe creates galaxies far from any observer. The principle of excess is ontological. To exist is already to go beyond the merely sufficient. Thus, super duper is not merely human silliness. It is a linguistic echo of cosmic exuberance. Where super names the height of order, super duper names the overflow of creation. One is the architecture of being, the other its laughter. The question then becomes, which do we need more, the super or the super duper? The answer, inevitably, is both. Without super, the world collapses into mediocrity. Without super duper, it ossifies into pride. Super gives us structure, aspiration, the discipline of ascent. Super duper gives us release, gratitude, the play of transcendence without anxiety. The wise person alternates between the two. They build the latter super, but they also know when to dance on its super duper. The ascetic becomes the celebrant the builder again. The rhythm between these modes, effort and joy, gravity and laughter, is what keeps life both meaningful and humane. The tragedy of our age is that we have forgotten this rhythm. We live in perpetual super without ever arriving at super duper. Our greatness lacks levity. Our seriousness forgets to smile. We reach upward but never laugh upward. The cosmos becomes a competition instead of a communion. Let us consider one last nuance. The duper in super duper is not a real word in itself. It gains meaning only through repetition and rhyme. This linguistic nothingness, this echo without substance, is precisely what gives the phrase its magic. For in doubling, the second half dissolves the first. Super duper becomes a gesture toward meaninglessness that nevertheless means. It mirrors art itself, an excessive form that transcends function. In this way, super duper contains a kind of metaphysical laughter, the laughter of being at its own redundancy. The world does not need two words for above. Yet, in having two, it discovers joy. The doubling becomes an emblem of creation's generosity, the willingness to spill over. This is why the child's speech feels divine. The child doubles words instinctively, not to be cute, but to express the too muchness of feeling. They sense that ordinary speech cannot carry wonder, and so they let language trip over itself. They know before philosophy does that truth is excessive. In the end, to distinguish super from super duper is to distinguish between the sublime and the ridiculous, and to realize they are not enemies but partners. The sublime without the ridiculous becomes tyrannical. The ridiculous without the sublime becomes hollow. But together they generate the full spectrum of human vitality, aspiration touched by laughter. Super is the gesture toward the heavens. Super duper is the moment when the heavens giggle back. The former builds cathedrals, the latter fills them with singing. The former names the height of virtue, the latter its joy. The former says rise, the latter says play. When we say super, we acknowledge the vertical structure of value, the hierarchy of good, better, best. When we say super duper, we explode it from within, affirming that beyond best lies something wordless. A smile, a chuckle, a release from comparison itself. The movement from super to super duper is thus the movement from striving to grace. And so the philosopher must conclude with paradox. Super duper is not an improvement on super, but its liberation. It rescues excellence from its own tension. It shows that transcendence need not always strain. Sometimes it dances. It reveals that perfection is not the final goal, but the playground of love. Perhaps the ultimate wisdom is to live as the Word does, to double ourselves joyfully, to repeat our seriousness with a wink, to say yes twice. The world may not need another duper, but the soul does. For it is only in the echo that meaning turns to laughter and the latter becomes a song. In the end, what is super duper? It is the smile of the cosmos after too much work. It is creation's reminder that even excellence must giggle to remain alive. It is the infinite saying to itself, once was not enough.